I was standing in my driveway at 7 in the morning, coffee in hand, watching two men in reflective vests load my propane tanks onto a flatbed truck, when I realized this wasn't some bizarre dream. "Excuse me, what the hell do you think you're doing?" I set my mug down on the hood of my truck and walked toward them. The morning air in Scottsdale, Arizona was already warming up, promising another scorcher of a June day. The older of the two men, probably in his 50s with a weathered face, barely glanced at me. "HOA violation. We're authorized to remove these tanks from the premises." "Authorized by who?" My voice rose despite my attempt to stay calm. "Those are my property. Madam said you were notified." He pulled out a work order, holding it just far enough away that I'd have to walk closer to read it. I snatched it from his hand. The letterhead read Sunset Ridge HOA with their pretentious Desert Sunset logo. Below that, a work order signed by one Patricia Henderson, HOA president. The violation code cited was 14.7b, improper storage of hazardous materials. "This is insane," I said. "Fire Chief Rodriguez approved this setup personally. I have documentation." "Not my problem, buddy," the younger guy chimed in, securing a strap around my 300-gallon tank. "We just do what we're told. You got an issue, take it up with the HOA." I pulled out my phone and started recording. "I'm documenting this. You're taking my property without proper notice, and I'm telling you right now, this installation was approved by the Scottsdale Fire Department." The older man shrugged. "Like I said, not our problem. We got our orders." I called the HOA office immediately. The phone rang 6 times before someone picked up. "Sunset Ridge HOA, this is Bethany speaking." "Bethany, this is Marcus Olsen from 4782 Desert Willow Drive. There are people in my driveway right now removing my propane tanks, and I never received any violation notice." "Oh, Mr. Olsen." Her voice took on that practiced customer service tone that meant absolutely nothing good was coming. "Yes, Patricia mentioned you might call. The violation notice was sent to your address 2 weeks ago via certified mail." "I never received certified mail." "That's not our responsibility if you don't check your mail, Mr. Olsen. The violation stands, and the tanks are being removed for the safety of the community." The fire chief personally approved my setup. Chief Rodriguez came out here himself, inspected everything, and gave me written approval. This is completely legal. HOA regulations supersede individual arrangements, Mr. Olsen. If you'd like to dispute this, you can submit a formal appeal and present your case at next month's board meeting. "Next month? That's 4 weeks away. I need those tanks. They run my backup generator, my outdoor kitchen, and my heating system for the pool house. My wife has a medical condition that requires climate-controlled environment. I'm sorry, but those are the procedures. The board meeting is scheduled for July 15th at 7 p.m. You'll receive information about submitting your appeal." She hung up before I could respond. By the time I turned around, my tanks were already on the truck, and the men were pulling out of my driveway. I stood there, phone in hand, feeling like I'd just been robbed in broad daylight. My wife Deanna came out, wrapping her robe around herself. "Marcus, what's going on?" Why were there trucks in our driveway? The HOA just seized our propane tanks. "They what?" claimed some violation. "Said they sent us notice 2 weeks ago, which is complete garbage because I check the mail every single day." Diana's face went pale. "But we need those for the backup generator. You know my condition, if the power goes out during summer and we can't run the AC in the pool house." I know. I put my arm around her. "I'll fix this. I'm calling Chief Rodriguez right now." I scrolled through my contacts and found Fire Chief Miguel Rodriguez's direct number. He'd given it to me specifically when he approved my propane setup 6 months ago, telling me to call if anyone gave me trouble about it. He answered on the third ring. Rodriguez. Chief, this is Marcus Olsen from Desert Willow Drive. We met about 6 months ago when you approved my propane installation. Marcus, sure, I remember. The 300-gallon setup with the dual regulators, clean installation, everything up to code. What can I do for you? My HOA just confiscated my tanks. Sent a crew out this morning and hauled them away on a flatbed. They're claiming it's a violation, but I told them you approved everything personally. There was a long pause. They did what? Took them, just now. I have it on video. Marcus, that's not legal. They can't confiscate property that's been approved by the fire department. We have jurisdiction over fire safety matters, not the HOA. Do you have the documentation I gave you? Yes, it's all in my files. The signed approval, the inspection certificate, everything. Okay, here's what you need to do. First, file a police report for theft of property. What they did is actually criminal. Second, I'm going to make some calls. Can you forward me whatever documentation the HOA gave you? They didn't give me anything except a work order that I had to grab from the contractor. They claim they sent certified mail 2 weeks ago, but I never received it. That's convenient for them. Listen, I'll reach out to their board directly. We've had issues with HOAs overstepping before, but this is particularly egregious. They don't have the authority to overrule fire department approvals. Thanks, Chief. I appreciate it. Don't mention it. This kind of thing drives me crazy. You did everything right, got proper approval, installed everything to code. Now some busybody on a power trip thinks they know better than the fire department. After hanging up with Chief Rodriguez, I called the Scottsdale Police non-emergency line. The dispatcher took my information and said an officer would come by to take a report within a few hours. Diana was in the kitchen making breakfast, but I could tell she was stressed. She'd been diagnosed with severe heat intolerance syndrome 3 years ago, a rare condition that made exposure to high temperatures dangerous for her. We'd converted the pool house into a climate-controlled space specifically for summer days when the main house AC couldn't keep up or during power outages. The propane-powered backup generator was essential. What did the chief say? She asked. He's making calls. He said what they did is actually criminal, and he told me to file a police report. Criminal. Yeah, apparently HOAs can't just confiscate property that's been approved by the fire department. They don't have that authority. My phone buzzed. An email from Patricia Henderson, HOA president. I opened it, already knowing it would infuriate me. Mr. Olsen, this email serves as official notification that your propane tank installation was found to be in violation of Sunset Ridge HOA covenants, conditions, and restrictions, specifically Section 14.7b regarding hazardous materials storage. While we understand, you may have obtained approval from external agencies. Such approvals do not supersede HOA regulations. Your tanks have been removed and are being held in secure storage. They will be returned once you have removed the installation infrastructure and paid the associated fines and storage fees. Total amount due, $3,847.00. Please remit payment within 30 days to avoid additional penalties. Regards, Patricia Henderson, HOA President. I read it aloud to Deanna, my voice getting louder with each sentence. $3,800. Deanna's eyes widened. For what? Let's see. Violation fine of $1,000, removal fee of $1,200, storage fee of $50 per day, and an administrative processing fee of $497. This is extortion. Can they do this? I don't know, but I'm about to find out. I spent the next hour digging through our HOA documents. The CC and Articles were a nightmare of legalese, but I finally found Section 14.7b. It prohibited the storage of hazardous materials in quantities exceeding normal household use without prior HOA approval. The key phrase was without prior HOA approval. I'd never sought HOA approval because Chief Rodriguez told me I didn't need it. Fire department approval superseded HOA regulations for safety matters. That's what he'd said, and I'd trusted him. He was the expert. But nowhere in my documentation had I officially notified the HOA. I'd assumed, perhaps stupidly, that the fire department approval would be enough. Officer Jennifer Marks arrived around 11. She was professional and thorough, taking down all the details while standing in my driveway where the tanks had been just hours before. "So you never received the certified notice they claimed to have sent?" she asked. "Never. I check the mail every day. If something had come certified, I would have signed for it or found a notice in my mailbox." "Do you have the fire department approval documentation?" I showed her the folder with Chief Rodriguez's signature, the inspection certificate, the detailed installation photos, and the compliance statement. "This looks pretty official," she said. "Have you contacted the fire department?" "Spoke with Chief Rodriguez this morning. He's the one who told me to file this report. He said what the HOA did is criminal." She made notes in her notebook. "Okay, I'm going to write this up as theft of property." The HOA's claim that they have authority to confiscate doesn't hold water when the property in question was legally installed with proper permits and approvals. They should have gone through the courts if they had an issue. So, what happens now? I'll file the report, and it'll go to the detective division. They'll investigate and determine if there's enough evidence to pursue charges. In the meantime, I'd recommend consulting with an attorney. This sounds like it's going to turn into a civil matter at minimum. After Officer Marks left, I started calling attorneys. The first 3 I tried didn't handle HOA disputes. The fourth, a lawyer named James Pitt, said he could meet with me that afternoon. His office was in Old Town Scottsdale, a converted adobe building that probably cost a fortune in rent. James was younger than I expected, maybe mid-30s, with sharp eyes and a firm handshake. "Tell me everything," he said, once we were settled in his conference room. I walked him through the entire situation, from the initial installation to this morning's confiscation. He took notes on a legal pad, occasionally asking clarifying questions. "You have any documentation showing you submitted your plans to the HOA?" he asked. "No, because I didn't. The fire chief said I didn't need HOA approval. Fire safety falls under his jurisdiction." He's right to a point. Fire departments do have authority over fire safety matters, and their approval generally supersedes HOA regulations. However, he leaned back in his chair. HOAs operate under CC and Articles, which are essentially contracts. When you bought your home, you agreed to those terms. The question becomes whether the CC and Articles can legally restrict something that's been approved by the fire department. Can they? Usually, no. There's established case law that HOAs can't enforce restrictions that violate public safety codes or conflict with government agency approvals. But it's not always clear-cut. What concerns me is this improper notice issue. They claim they sent certified mail. Yes, 2 weeks ago, I never got it. Do they have proof of delivery? I don't know. They didn't provide any. James made another note. "Okay, here's what we're going to do. First, I'm going to send them a formal demand letter requiring them to return your property immediately and provide proof of proper notice. Second, We're going to request copies of any documentation they have regarding their supposed notification to you. Third, if they don't comply within 48 hours, we're filing for emergency injunctive relief. What's that? We go to court and ask a judge to order them to return your property immediately, before going through the full legal process. Given that your wife has a medical condition requiring the backup power, we have good grounds for emergency relief. How much is this going to cost? My retainer is $5,000. If this goes to trial, it could be more, but most HOA disputes settle once lawyers get involved and they realize they've overstepped. I thought about Deanna, about the Arizona summer heat that could kill her, about the principle of the thing. Let's do it. James drafted the demand letter while I waited, then emailed it directly to Patricia Henderson with me copied. It was beautifully aggressive, citing statute after statute and threatening both criminal and civil action. When I got home, Diana was in the pool house with every fan we owned running. It was only early June, but already hitting 95 degrees outside. How'd it go with the lawyer? She asked. He's sending them a demand letter. If they don't return the tanks in 48 hours, we're going to court. Marcus, how much is this costing? $5,000 for the retainer. She closed her eyes. That's more than what they're demanding in fines. This isn't about the money anymore, Deanna. They stole our property. They can't just do that and get away with it. My phone rang. Unknown number. I answered anyway. Mr. Olsen, this is Patricia Henderson from the HOA. Her voice was exactly what I'd imagined. Nasal, superior, dripping with false politeness. Miss Henderson, I understand you've filed a police report and hired an attorney. That seems like a rather extreme reaction to a simple code violation. A simple code violation. You confiscated thousands of dollars worth of my property without proper notice and are demanding nearly $4,000 in fees. That's theft, Miss Henderson. We sent you certified notice, Mr. Olsen. Your failure to retrieve it isn't our responsibility. Show me proof of delivery. Show me the signature, because I never received any certified mail. I'll have my secretary send you the documentation. Please do. And while you're at it, explain to me how the HOA thinks it has the authority to overrule the fire department. The fire department doesn't govern this community, Mr. Olsen. The HOA does. We have rules for a reason. Fire safety isn't a matter for HOA rules, Miss Henderson. It's a matter of public safety, which falls under the fire department's jurisdiction. Chief Rodriguez personally approved my installation. I'm aware of your supposed approval. However, you failed to seek HOA permission, which is required under our CC and RTCS. My lawyer disagrees. You'll be hearing from him formally. I already did. His letter was very theatrical. However, it doesn't change the facts. You're in violation, and the tanks will be returned when you've complied with our requirements and paid the associated fees. We'll see what a judge says about that. She hung up without saying goodbye. I immediately called James. She just called me, I said. Basically told me to pound sand. Good, that'll work in our favor. The more unreasonable they are, the better our case. Did she mention the proof of delivery? Said her secretary would send it. I'll watch for it. In the meantime, start documenting everything. Keep a log of every interaction, every phone call, every email. It'll all be useful. That evening, Deanna had an episode. The heat got to her despite the fans, and she ended up dizzy and nauseous. I had to help her into the main house where the AC was stronger, and she spent 2 hours lying on the bathroom floor because the tile was cool. We can't do this all summer, she said weakly. I need that generator, Marcus. I know. I'm working on it. The next morning, I received an email from Patricia's secretary with a PDF attachment. It was a certified mail receipt showing my address, dated 2 weeks prior, with a signature I'd never seen before. I zoomed in on the signature. It was illegible, just a scrawl, but it definitely wasn't mine. The date stamp showed it had been signed for at 10:30 in the morning on a Tuesday. I'd been at work that day. I checked my calendar to be sure. Yes, I'd had back-to-back meetings from 8 until noon. There was no way I'd signed for anything. I forwarded the email to James with a note. This isn't my signature, and I was at work when this was supposedly delivered. He called me 5 minutes later. This is perfect. They're either lying about the delivery or someone else signed for it. Either way, it's not proper notice. Do you have anyone else living at your house? Anyone who might have signed? Just me and Deanna, and she was at her doctor's appointment that morning. I remember because I had to reschedule my afternoon to take her. Even better. Get me proof that you were both elsewhere when this was supposedly delivered. Work emails, calendar invites, anything time-stamped. I spent the afternoon gathering evidence. Screenshots of my work calendar, emails I'd sent during that morning's meetings, Diana's medical records showing her appointment. It was airtight. James filed for emergency injunctive relief that Friday. The hearing was scheduled for the following Tuesday, 4 days away. In the meantime, Patricia sent another email increasing the storage fees and adding a new non-compliance penalty of $500. The total was now over $4,500. She's just running up the bill, James said when I called him. Don't worry about it. The judge is going to eviscerate them. Tuesday came. The courthouse in downtown Scottsdale was brutally air-conditioned, a stark contrast to the 103-degree heat outside. Deanna came with me, pale and exhausted from 3 days of struggling with inadequate cooling. Patricia Henderson was exactly what I'd pictured. Mid-50s, severe haircut, expensive pantsuit, and an expression like she'd been sucking lemons. Her lawyer was a nervous-looking man in an ill-fitting suit who kept shuffling papers. Judge Sarah Winters took the bench promptly at 2. She was probably in her 60s, with gray hair and sharp, intelligent eyes. This is a hearing on the plaintiff's motion for emergency injunctive relief, she began. Mr. Pitt, you're representing the plaintiff. Yes, Your Honor, proceed. James laid out our case methodically. The fire department approval, the lack of proper notice, Diana's medical condition, the HOA's unlawful seizure of property. He presented the forged signature, the proof that neither Diana nor I had been home when the certified mail was supposedly delivered. Patricia's lawyer, who introduced himself as Ronald Webb, tried to argue that the signature didn't matter because notice had been attempted in good faith. Judge Winters cut him off. Counsel, are you seriously arguing that a forged signature constitutes proper notice? Your Honor, we have no proof the signature was forged. Perhaps a neighbor or delivery person signed on behalf of the resident. Neither of which would constitute proper legal notice, Mr. Webb. Continue, Mr. Pitt. James presented Chief Rodriguez's written statement, submitted that morning, explicitly stating that the fire department had jurisdiction over fire safety matters, and that the propane installation was fully compliant with all codes. When it was Webb's turn, he fumbled through an argument about HOA authority and the sanctity of CC and Artiques. Judge Winters looked increasingly impatient. Mr. Webb, does your client have any documentation showing that Mr. Olsen was properly notified of this alleged violation? We have the certified mail receipt, Your Honor, with a forged signature delivered when neither resident was home, which the plaintiff has thoroughly documented. Do you have anything else? No, Your Honor. Does your client dispute that the fire department approved this installation? We don't dispute that Mr. Olsen obtained some approval from the fire department, but that approval doesn't supersede HOA regulations. Judge Winters removed her glasses and fixed Webb with a look. Counsel, fire safety is a matter of public policy and falls under the jurisdiction of the fire department. HOAs cannot enforce regulations that conflict with fire codes or overrule fire department approvals. This is established law. Are you familiar with the case of Riverside Homeowners Association versus Chen? Yes, Your Honor. Then you know that the court-held HOAs cannot restrict safety equipment that's been approved by the relevant government agency. How is this different? Webb had no answer. Patricia leaned over and whispered something urgently to him, but he just shook his head. Judge Winters put her glasses back on. Here's what's going to happen. The HOA will return Mr. Olsen's property within 24 hours. All fines and fees are hereby voided. Furthermore, I'm ordering the HOA to reimburse Mr. Olsen for his legal fees incurred in bringing this action. Mr. Webb, your client is lucky I'm not holding them in contempt for that forged signature stunt. Patricia stood up. Your Honor, if I may. You may not, Miss Henderson. Sit down. Your organization confiscated legally installed, fire department approved safety equipment based on fraudulent notice. You then attempted to extort thousands of dollars from a homeowner whose wife has a documented medical condition requiring that equipment. I suggest you and your board familiarize yourselves with the limits of HOA authority before you try something like this again. The gavel came down. We'd won. Outside the courtroom, Patricia tried to approach me, but James stepped between us. All communication goes through me, Miss Henderson. She glared at him, then at me. This isn't over. Actually, it is, James said calmly. And if you continue to harass my client, we'll be back here filing for a restraining order. She stalked off, heels clicking on the marble floor. Webb scurried after her. That went well, James said with a slight smile. Thank you, I managed. Seriously, thank you. My pleasure. Cases this clear-cut don't come along often. Get your property back, document its return, and send me the invoice. The judge ordered them to pay my fees, so you won't be out the $5,000. The next day, a different contractor showed up at my house, this time to reinstall my propane tanks. He was apologetic, explaining that he'd been told it was a legitimate HOA removal and hadn't known there was a dispute. Not your fault, I told him. You were just doing your job. It took most of the day to get everything reconnected and tested, but by evening we had full propane service again. Deanna cried with relief when the backup generator hummed to life. I thought that would be the end of it. I was wrong. 2 weeks later, I received another violation notice. This time, it was for my landscaping. Apparently, my desert sage bushes were non-compliant with community aesthetic standards. I took photos, documented everything, and sent it to James. She's retaliating, he said. This is textbook harassment. Do you have approval for your landscaping? It's native plants recommended by the Arizona Water Conservation Alliance. I have their certification. Perfect. Forward me that documentation. I'm going to file for a restraining order against the HOA. This has gone beyond a simple dispute. But before James could file, things escalated dramatically. I came home from work on a Friday evening to find my front door standing open. Diana's car was in the driveway, but she didn't answer when I called her name. My heart pounding, I pushed the door open wider. The house had been ransacked. Furniture overturned, drawers pulled out, papers everywhere. Deanna, I shouted, running through the house. I found her in our bedroom, sitting on the floor, crying. Are you okay? What happened? They came in, she sobbed. Patricia and 2 men. They said they had the right to inspect for violations. They went through everything, Marcus, everything. I tried to stop them, but she said it was within their authority. I pulled out my phone and called 911. The police arrived within 10 minutes. This time it was a different officer, a sergeant named David Kowalski. He took one look at our house and his expression turned grim. "Your wife says HOA members did this. The HOA president and 2 men. Deanna was here alone. They claimed they had the right to inspect." Sergeant Kowalski shook his head. "No HOA has the right to enter a residence without permission, and certainly not to conduct a search like this. This is breaking and entering at minimum, possibly burglary depending on whether anything was taken. I haven't checked everything yet, but I need to make sure my wife is okay first." A paramedic checked Deanna out. She was shaken but physically unharmed. However, her blood pressure was elevated, and they recommended she see her doctor as soon as possible. While Deanna was being examined, I went through the house with Sergeant Kowalski. My office had been completely torn apart. My filing cabinets were open, papers strewn everywhere. And then I noticed it. "The fire department approval documents are gone," I said. "They were in this cabinet and now they're missing." "Are you certain?" "Absolutely. I had the originals in a blue folder right here." I pointed to the empty drawer. "They took them." Kowalski's expression hardened. "That's theft of documents, destruction of evidence, and potentially witness tampering if those documents were going to be used in ongoing legal proceedings. We have an ongoing dispute. There was a court hearing 2 weeks ago. Were these documents relevant to that case?" "They were the key evidence. Fire Chief Rodriguez's personal approval of my propane installation." "Okay, this just became much more serious. I'm going to call for detectives." Detective Sarah Martinez arrived about 30 minutes later. She was thorough and professional, photographing everything, taking statements, collecting evidence. "Did you have any security cameras?" she asked. "No, but my neighbor might. He has a Ring doorbell that faces this direction." We went next door. My neighbor Tom was happy to help. His Ring camera had captured everything. The footage was damning. It showed Patricia Henderson arriving with 2 men around 2 in the afternoon. They'd knocked on the door, argued with Deanna briefly, then pushed their way inside. The audio was clear enough to hear Patricia saying, "As HOA president, I have the authority to inspect for violations." The 3 of them had been inside for nearly 45 minutes before leaving with a cardboard box. "That's evidence of forced entry, theft, and potentially assault," Detective Martinez said. "I'm going to need copies of this footage." Tom readily agreed, and Martinez downloaded the video to her tablet. "What happens now?" I asked. "I'm going to interview Patricia Henderson and the 2 men with her. Depending on what they say, we'll likely be making arrests. This is serious, Mr. Olsen. They can't just break into someone's home and steal documents." I called James immediately. When I told him what happened, there was a long silence. "They did what?" I repeated the story. "Marcus, this is criminal. This is way beyond HOA overreach. They've committed multiple felonies. The police are investigating now." "Good. Document everything. Take photos of the damage. Get copies of the police report, and whatever you do, make copies of that Ring footage. We're going to bury them." Over the next few days, the story unfolded. Detective Martinez interviewed Patricia Henderson, who initially denied everything. Then, confronted with the Ring footage, she changed her story, claiming she had the authority to conduct inspections under the CC and Articus. The 2 men with her were Harold Jennings and Keith Morrison, both members of the HOA board. When interviewed separately, their stories didn't match Patricia's, and both eventually admitted they'd felt uncomfortable with what they were doing but went along with it, because Patricia insisted it was legal. The stolen documents were recovered from Patricia's home office during a search authorized by warrant. Along with my fire department approval, they found documents belonging to at least 3 other homeowners in the community, all related to HOA disputes. Detective Martinez presented the case to the county attorney's office. On a Thursday morning, 3 weeks after the break-in, Patricia Henderson was arrested and charged with burglary, theft, criminal trespass, and intimidation. Harold Jennings and Keith Morrison were charged as accomplices, but offered plea deals in exchange for their testimony against Patricia. The story made the local news. HOA president arrested for breaking into resident's home was the headline in the Scottsdale Progress. The story detailed the propane tank dispute, the court order Patricia had violated, and the subsequent break-in. The fallout was immediate and spectacular. The Sunset Ridge HOA board held an emergency meeting and voted unanimously to remove Patricia as president. Several board members resigned, and the remaining members issued a public apology. I received a personal letter from the new interim president, a reasonable-seeming woman named Michelle Torres. Dear Mr. Olsen, on behalf of the Sunset Ridge HOA board, I want to offer our sincerest apologies for the actions of our former president and the distress this situation has caused you and your family. Miss Henderson's behavior was completely unacceptable and in no way represents the values of our community. We are conducting a complete review of our policies and procedures to ensure nothing like this ever happens again. Your propane installation is, of course, fully approved and compliant. We have voided all fines and fees associated with this matter. Additionally, the board has voted to compensate you for your legal expenses and the damage to your property. Please let us know if there is anything we can do to make this right. Sincerely, Michelle Torres, Interim President. The compensation check that followed was for $15,000. James reviewed the settlement agreement and advised me to accept it. They're covering their exposure, he explained. Smart move on their part. This keeps you from suing them into oblivion. What about Patricia? Her criminal case is separate. The county attorney is prosecuting aggressively, breaking into someone's home and stealing legal documents. That's not something they take lightly. Patricia's trial was scheduled for October. In the meantime, life slowly returned to normal. Diana's health stabilized with the reliable backup power system in place. The new HOA board was professional and reasonable, actually working to serve the community rather than terrorize it. I got a call from Chief Rodriguez about a month after Patricia's arrest. Marcus, I heard about what happened. I'm sorry you had to go through all that. Not your fault, Chief. Your approval was solid. She just couldn't accept that she didn't have ultimate authority. That's the problem with some of these HOA boards. They forget they're governing a community, not running a dictatorship. For what it's worth, I've been working with the City Council on new ordinances to clarify the relationship between fire department authority and HOA regulations. Your case is going to help prevent this from happening to others. I'm glad something good came out of it. How's your wife doing? Better, now that we have the backup power reliable again. Thank you for asking. Take care, Marcus, and if you ever have any other issues, you call me directly. Patricia's trial in October was anticlimactic. Faced with overwhelming evidence, including the ring footage, the stolen documents, and testimony from Jennings and Morrison, her lawyer advised her to take a plea deal. She pleaded guilty to burglary and theft charges. The judge sentenced her to 3 years probation, 200 hours of community service, and ordered her to pay restitution for our legal fees and the damages to our property. She was also permanently banned from serving on any HOA board in Arizona. Diana and I attended the sentencing hearing. Patricia looked diminished, defeated. Gone was the imperious woman who declared her authority to do whatever she wanted. She read a brief statement apologizing for her actions, though it felt rehearsed and insincere. As we left the courthouse, Diana squeezed my hand. "Is it really over?" "Yeah," I said. "It's really over." The Sunset Ridge HOA underwent a complete transformation over the following months. Michelle Torres led a reform effort that overhauled the CC and Articus, implemented transparent procedures, and established clear limits on board authority. Several of the most draconian rules were eliminated or modified. At a community meeting in November, Michelle publicly recognized several homeowners who'd been mistreated by the previous board, including me. She presented a new community charter that emphasized cooperation and respect rather than enforcement and penalties. "We're a community, not a police state," she said to applause from the assembled homeowners. "Our job is to maintain property values and provide services, not to make people's lives miserable." I even ended up joining the Architectural Review Committee, using my experience to help other homeowners navigate the approval process for improvements and installations. It felt good to be part of the solution rather than just a victim of the problem. Tom, my neighbor with the Ring doorbell, became something of a local hero. His footage had been the key evidence in Patricia's prosecution, and several news outlets interviewed him about the importance of home security cameras. "I just wanted to know when packages were delivered," he joked in one interview. "I never expected to catch a crime being committed." Diana's health continued to improve. With the stress of the HOA dispute behind us and reliable climate control, she had fewer episodes and was able to resume more normal activities. We even hosted a barbecue in July, using the propane-powered outdoor kitchen that had started the whole mess. Chief Rodriguez came to the barbecue, bringing his family. Over grilled steaks, he told stories about other HOA disputes he'd dealt with over the years. "Yours wasn't even the craziest," he said. "I once had an HOA try to ban fire extinguishers because they were visually unappealing. Can you believe that? I had to explain to them that fire safety codes aren't optional. What happened? They backed down once I threatened to report them to the state fire marshal. Most HOAs are reasonable when you actually explain things to them. It's the ones run by petty tyrants that cause problems." Patricia definitely fit that description. The scary thing is how common it is. Give someone a tiny bit of power over their neighbors, and some people just can't handle it responsibly. As fall turned to winter, I reflected on everything that had happened. What started as a simple propane installation had spiraled into theft, break-ins, arrests, and trials. But in the end, justice had prevailed. The legal system had worked exactly as it should. The fire department's authority had been upheld, the HOA's overreach had been punished, and the criminals had faced consequences for their actions. More importantly, our community had learned valuable lessons about governance, authority, and respect. The new HOA board was functioning better than ever, with higher homeowner satisfaction and fewer complaints. I framed Chief Rodriguez's fire department approval and hung it in my office, both as a reminder of the ordeal and as a symbol that doing things the right way ultimately pays off. I'd gotten proper permits, followed all the codes, and obtained official approval. When challenged, those facts had protected me. In December, I ran into Ronald Webb, Patricia's lawyer, at a coffee shop in Old Town. He recognized me and approached hesitantly. "Mr. Olsen, I hope you don't mind, but I wanted to apologize. I should never have taken that case. It was obvious from the start that Patricia was in the wrong, but she was a long-time client, and I made a mistake." I considered his words. He looked genuinely remorseful. "I appreciate you saying that," I said. "We all make mistakes. The important thing is learning from them." He nodded. "I've dropped all my HOA clients. I can't stomach that kind of work anymore. The power dynamics are too often abused. Have you considered working for homeowners instead?" "People fighting HOA overreach." His eyes lit up. "You know, that's not a bad idea." We talked for a few more minutes, and I ended up giving him James Pitt's contact information. Maybe they could work together, helping homeowners navigate disputes with their HOAs. On Christmas Eve, our doorbell rang. I opened it to find a delivery man with a massive gift basket. "For Marcus and Deanna Olsen," he said, checking his clipboard. I brought it inside and read the card. It was from the entire Sunset Ridge HOA board, thanking us for our patience during the transition and wishing us happy holidays. The basket was filled with gourmet foods, local wines, and gift cards to Scottsdale restaurants. "That's actually really nice," Deanna said, reading the card over my shoulder. "It is. Maybe we really did help make things better." As 2025 turned into 2026, I could honestly say the nightmare was behind us. Our propane tanks hummed reliably in the side yard, properly installed and approved by all relevant authorities. Our backup generator stood ready to protect Diana through the summer heat. And our HOA was now run by reasonable people who understood the limits of their authority. I'd learned important lessons about standing up for what's right, even when it's difficult and expensive. I'd learned that the legal system, while slow, generally reaches the correct conclusions when presented with clear facts. And I'd learned that sometimes the worst situations can lead to positive changes that benefit everyone. Patricia Henderson's mugshot occasionally still circulated on social media, usually accompanied by warnings about HOA tyranny. She'd become a cautionary tale, a reminder that power without accountability leads to abuse. For my part, I was content to return to anonymity. I'd never wanted to be at the center of a legal battle or a news story. I just wanted to live in my home, keep my wife safe, and enjoy the Arizona sunshine. The propane tanks continued to function perfectly, exactly as Chief Rodriguez had approved. And every time I saw them, I smiled, knowing that sometimes doing things the right way and standing your ground really does pay off. The HOA never bothered me again. In fact, when I submitted plans to add solar panels to my roof, the approval came back in less than 48 hours with a note from Michelle Torres. "Looks great. Thanks for improving our community." That was exactly how an HOA should function. Not as a dictatorship enforcing arbitrary rules, but as a partnership working to make the neighborhood better for everyone. On a warm evening in late January, Deanna and I sat on our back patio, the propane heater keeping us comfortable as the desert temperature dropped. The backup generator was silent but ready, the tanks full and properly maintained. "You know," Deanna said, "I never thought I'd be grateful for propane tanks." I laughed. "Me neither, but here we are." "Do you regret fighting it? It was a lot of stress, a lot of money initially, all that drama." I thought about it. No, I don't regret it. If we hadn't fought back, Patricia would still be terrorizing other homeowners. The HOA would still be dysfunctional, and we'd be living in fear that she could just take whatever she wanted whenever she felt like it. True. And the new board really is better. Much better. That's the silver lining. Sometimes it takes a crisis to create real change. A shooting star streaked across the clear Arizona sky, and Deanna made a wish. I didn't ask what it was, but I had a feeling it involved peace, health, and no more HOA drama. As for me, I wished for exactly what we had. A safe home, a functioning community, and the knowledge that justice, though sometimes slow, eventually prevails. The propane tanks sat quietly in their approved location, a testament to the fact that when you do things right and stand your ground, even the most determined tyrant can't win. The story of Patricia Henderson and the Sunset Ridge HOA became legendary in Scottsdale, a cautionary tale told at city council meetings and homeowner associations throughout the region. Changes were implemented citywide to prevent similar abuses, including mandatory training for HOA board members on the limits of their authority and clearer procedures for homeowners to appeal violations. Chief Rodriguez's proposed ordinances were adopted by the City Council, explicitly stating that fire department approvals for safety equipment could not be overridden by HOA regulations. It was officially called the Homeowner Protection Act, but people informally referred to it as Marcus's Law. I never sought recognition for any of it. The real reward was simply being able to live my life without harassment, knowing my family was safe and our home was protected. Everything else was just noise. The propane tanks continued to sit in my side yard, gleaming in the Arizona sun, a permanent reminder that sometimes the smallest battles can have the biggest impacts. And every time I fired up the backup generator for its monthly test, I thought about how close we'd come to losing it all and how grateful I was that we'd fought back. Justice had been served, the criminals had been punished, and the community had been reformed. In the end, that was all anyone could ask for. The system had worked and we were safe. That was enough.